All right, let's jump right in. We're going to tackle a huge global issue today, falling birth rates. But we're looking at it through a lens that you've probably never even considered before. We're talking about it as a moral choice.
So, think about this for a second. Is it possible that what we all see as just an economic or social trend, this demographic crisis, is actually rooted in something much, much deeper? Could it be a spiritual problem? It's a massive question, and it's the core idea we're digging into today.
Now, this whole idea comes from a really fascinating theological analysis by Avraham Goldstein. And he argues that to really get a grip on our modern demographic crisis, we actually need to rewind the clock way back to a 4,000-year-old story from the book of Genesis. It's a pretty wild way to look at a very modern problem. Okay, so Section 1, a crisis of grace. How in the world do we get from birth rates to morality? Well, this is where the foundational argument gets laid out, that a society's fertility, its ability to even have future generations, isn't just about money. It's directly tied to its moral and spiritual health. The analysis even gives this idea a name, moral barrenness. The argument is that what we call population decline is just a symptom of something Goldstein calls a dilution of grace. In other words, a society is losing its connection to a deeper source of meaning, of life itself. So what does this disconnection actually look like in the real world? The analysis says the signs are all around us. It points to the breakdown of fundamental relationships between men and women, between people and their neighbors, and, this is critical, between nations and what the article calls their ultimate source of blessing. To make this idea really stick, the analysis brings in this ancient story. It presents two biblical kings, Pharaoh and Abimelech, as these powerful archetypes. And how each of them reacted to meeting Abraham and Sarah, well, that's the key to this whole argument. Okay, this slide is really the heart of the matter. On one side, you've got Pharaoh. He represents what the article calls a grace of fear. He sees Sarah's physical beauty, right? But he's totally blind to who she is spiritually. So when he's confronted, his move is to disconnect, take her and go. And the result for him and his kingdom? Plagues, barrenness. Now look at Abimelech. He represents a grace of recognition. He messes up too, but when he finds out the truth, he tries to connect. He acknowledges Abraham's importance and offers him his land, and the result is the total opposite, healing and renewed fertility. And this quote from the source just nails it. The argument is that this act of genuine connection is what restores the world's power to create life. And this isn't just biological. The article calls it moral fertility, a kind of vitality that comes from being plugged into a true source of purpose. So you're probably thinking, an ancient story about things. What does that have to do with today? Well, this is where the analysis makes a really sharp, and you could say controversial turn. It argues this exact same dynamic is playing out right now in modern politics, and it points directly to New York City politician Zohar Mamdani as a kind of modern-day pharaoh. And there it is. This is the central claim the article makes about our world today. It's suggesting that Mamdani's whole political ideology is a new version of that same old pattern, a pattern of disconnection, of a morality that keeps its distance. Now, to back this up, the analysis points to statements like this one. And listen, on the surface, it sounds great, right? A commitment to humanity. But the Goldstein article argues that this focus on a vague, abstract humanity, a justice for all people that's detached from any specific identity or loyalty, is the very definition of that pharaonic, disconnected model it's critiquing. And the analysis builds its case by pointing to this political context. It mentions his background with Students for Justice in Palestine, his association with figures like Linda Sarsour, and his endorsement from the Democratic Socialists of America. The article argues that the DSA's big picture goals, like abolishing borders, are expressions of that same abstract universalism and are therefore part of this modern pharaonic archetype. So, and this is super important, the point here isn't just about one politician. It's about a much broader theory of how certain ideologies can, according to this analysis, actually lead a society into decline. It's all about the politics of connection versus disconnection. So, here's the logic chain the article lays out. Step 1. A culture starts to value what it calls disconnected universalism, rejecting the idea that any group has a unique mission or identity. Step 2. This leads to a society losing its specific sense of purpose. And step 3. The final result is both moral and demographic decline because, well, the reason to build a future and have kids just starts to fade away. And this right here is the philosophical core of the whole thing. The analysis is basically saying that if a society loses its own particular story, its answer to why are we special and who are we building this for, it eventually loses its answer to the biggest question, what's the purpose? And the will to have kids, it argues, is tied directly to having a good answer. Which brings us to the conclusion of the analysis. It frames this entire issue as a fundamental choice that has to be made. It's a choice between two paths, connection or disconnection. And the stakes are, quite literally, generational. This chart is a great way to see the whole argument in one picture. On that vertical axis, you've got the level of connection to the source. The analysis puts Pharaoh and, in the modern parallel, Mamdani, way down at the low end. They represent disconnection. And all the way at the top, you've got Avimelech representing that ideal of a strong, healthy connection. So in the end, the two opposing worldviews are laid out right here. Is our morality going to be a grace of fear, distant and technical, or a grace of covenant, a real, committed partnership? Is justice just some abstract idea with no roots, or is it a blessing that flows from a specific, real source? The analysis ends with this incredibly provocative statement that just puts it all on the line. Every generation that chooses a covenant with Israel is born anew. Every generation that distances itself from it returns to the barrenness of Pharaoh. It's a powerful final claim, suggesting this ancient choice is one that every single generation, including ours, has to answer for itself.